This week on Brupeg, we try the trickiest TIG welding we've ever done to make something fancy. Stu dropped a packet of sparkles inside the wheelhouse on Renko, and I get out the 9-inch. We're a Kiwi couple living in Australia who brought a 57-foot steel trawler after she sunk in a flood and was pulled from the sea. We're now bringing her back to life. We're on to the finishing jobs after working on her for the last 6 years to refit and get her ready for launch as soon as possible. Brupeg is rebuilt by us with volunteers funded by Patreons and viewers, and we spend every cent we have to make sure that she's ready. She's fueled by veggie oil, diesel, solar and wind power to do research, projects and expeditions to remote places like Antarctica and the Northwest Passage. She'll be crewed by supporters from around the world. Welcome aboard. We're starting with a job that I've been avoiding for maybe 18 months now. These are the Sponsons. They're a wear strip. They run around the side of the boat, they weld it onto the hull, and they stop the paint getting ripped off the hull when you're wearing up and down against wharfs, marinas, that sort of thing, or other boats. They're not painted inside, and we need to protect that, so the way that you do that on a steel boat is actually weld them up as a sealed tank so that there's no new oxygen that can get inside. First step is we need to cut them off on an angle so that they look nice and pretty when we weld these up. Easiest way to do this is with a 9-inch grinder. With the new blades you've got lots of depth and you can just do a plunge cut right the way in like this, and you can pretty much get the whole thing with one cut. While I'm doing this, Stu's plasma cutting some patches on the roof of Renko to stop some leaks.
We should see if we could get Stu some copyright violations on YouTube. We're doing covers on this boat on the Dango Marine channel. We could, like a virgin, touched for the very first time.
We actually played that song live at the bowling club. It's a great song.
Like a virgin. 7 years to life.
With the bulk of the steel cut off with the 9-inch grinder, it's time to give everything a clean up with the 5-inch grinder. It's just easier to get it into those tight little spaces, make everything perfect for welding. Now that that end's trimmed up and we've ground, where we need to weld down here, and then also around here you can sort of see there's no paint anywhere that's going to cause any issue. We can get in there, we'll flux core MIG that and cap that off so that it's a solid tank. There's no possible air getting in and out of there. Exactly the same on this side. So you can see we've basically gone around this rim here and cleaned that right up, and then vertical up here as well, just to make sure that there's no issues. I do need to add, you can see there's a tiny corner missing there. I will be adding a sort of a triangle of steel in there just to blend that in. I didn't want to take too much more off the Sponson, so I just thought rather than hack it off there, I'll just carry that right across. But that's coming up nice. We still need to do this line here. This is basically where we plasma cut the Sponson off. Got to knock that off, so we'll get to that soon. But we're getting pretty close to being able to cap these off. Those Sponsons, when they're welded up, are going to be a completely sealed tank, and there's just going to be oxygen and air and whatever in there. They will rust for a couple of weeks, whatever it might be, maybe a month or two, but eventually the rust will stop. And the reason being is because rust needs oxygen. If you've got a completely sealed steel tank, you can leave it unpainted on the inside and it will rust for a little bit until the oxygen's used up, and then it'll stop rusting and it'll stay in that state indefinitely. If you don't open that tank up again, it can last 100 years without any internal rust. That's quite common on trawlers and bigger boats like this, to seal up a tank that has to be like an air tank or an airlock. Crash bulkheads are a great example of that, where it's a safety feature to have that as a completely sealed air tank. They won't paint inside, they'll just weld it shut and then allow it to rust on the surface, and then once it's used up that oxygen, all done. Using cardboard aided design to make ourselves some templates so that we can cut the steel to the right shape. We need the plasma cutter, which is currently located up on Renko because Stu's been chopping his deck off. This plasma cutter has a pilot light, or a high frequency start as it's sometimes called. What it means is basically as soon as you pull the trigger, you start getting plasma out. It chews up the consumables a little bit when you do that, but it's so much easier to use compared to some of the cheaper models that basically don't have that feature. While we're making and sandblasting these parts ready to put into the boat, Stu's found a couple of leaks in his wheelhouse that he's dealing with, so he's plasma cutted them out and he's already welding in some new steel patches.
Sparkly bits.
Don't look at it. Ah!
Alright, more sparklies.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, darling. Welding was good too. This is going out to all my peeps with a brain injury. Sparkly bits. Okay. Sparkle. Okay, I'm going to go and try and get the steel this time. Much better. Because we don't need massive strength in this area, we've done a vertical down and then a vertical down over here. Look at the quality of the weld in terms of the looks. It looks absolutely lovely, and that's why I did vertical down rather than vertical up. Vertical up, like this guy here, is much stronger, but it's not necessarily as nice to look at. So when I don't need strength, I do a vertical down just because it's a beautiful looking weld.
I haven't forgot about that little triangle that I had to put in there. Rather than cut a piece of steel to fit, I actually just took my time and then filled it up with MIG. Once the welding's finished, I like to go over everything with a 5-inch grinder just to take off any lumps and bumps and make sure the edges are nice and radiused. It's a trick when you're painting steel is never have a sharp edge because the paint always goes thin on that edge, so by radiusing it off, when we go to sandblast, we're good to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go live. Hello, hope you guys can see me. With like 10 seconds to go, everyone ran out of the room. So we've got some stuff we want to announce to you guys today. We're having a bit of a giveaway. This is our giveaway piece, and there's a video of you know what it took to actually make this, so that we can prove that it is part of Brupeg. This is a part of the Sponson, so it welds onto the side of the boat in that orientation, and that's a stainless strip welded onto it on the side there. That's the rub rail, so if we're up against wharfs, we don't rub up and down on the boat, it's hitting on stainless. This is something that we're going to give to a viewer of the live stream. So
Dame tagged in Brupeg on it.
So I'm not 100% certain if it's going to show up real crash hot in the camera. What we want you guys to do is in the comments, we want you to chuck in, comment what your most favourite part of Brupeg was. So it could be anything. It could be something that was built, something that crashed, something that didn't work, something that the crew did.
A part of the boat you particularly like.
Yeah, even if you like a bit of the boat.
And we're just going to choose one person and then...
We'll pick the comment that is like the most awesome comment. And then
one that tickles our fancy.
Yeah.
Or it'll be random.
And then if we mention your name, just grab the email address teambrupeg@gmail.com and send us your mailing details.
Yeah, just catch it now if you want anyway, because it might be you. So
there's our contact details if you ever want to get in touch with us. And then
No, please, just sit around.
She wouldn't mind a shoulder massage.
Will there be a drag race between Renko and Brupeg? Guys?
Is there a drag race between us?
Won't really be a race, it'll just be me looking backwards and waving at you as you...
This morning's job on the big ship, Brupeg. We're on the port wing again, and we are back to our sponsons on this side. Same job we did on the other side. We need to cap these sponsons, so trim the back at an angle and then cap them. And then we're also going to have a go at getting our wear strips into the sliders themselves. So we're going to be drilling and tapping M4 threads right the way up those sliders.
You rock my world, baby. You rock my world like no one else. You make it spin and twirl, baby. You rattle my chain, baby. You rattle my chain. Yeah, you found the key to drive my poor heart insane. Alright.
Time for a little speed templating. Slap a bit of cardboard on that. Look at that! Oh, let's draw a line around it. Line drawn. Right. I don't want to cut this at that line, because if I do that, the steel ends up being bang on the size of the outside diameter of this piece of half round. What I want to do, I cut like in, say, 5mm or I don't know, 6 foot-pounds, something like that. And then what that allows me to do is on this join, the edge of the new steel is, say, about here. This is 8mm. We're putting 6mm on the end of it. So it brings the join down, and then I can just fill the V up, you know, all the way around with my MIG welder, and I get a nice, not only do I get a nice penetration weld, but I also get a nice curve on the weld, so kind of finishes it quite nice as well. These are our two templates. So we just need to transfer them over onto this piece of steel and plasma cut them out. Jess getting into Zen gardening in a big way.
That's how you rock it, baby.
There's three things needed to be a good boat builder. The right tools, the right material, and the right look.
Baby, you rock my world. Baby,
I want to show you a technique that I use when I plasma cut little swirls. So I'm basically doing tiny little swirls with the end of the plasma cutter, and you can see the pieces just fall apart when you do that. You got a nice straight cut, but the slag doesn't join up at the back of the cut because the cut is wide enough that it doesn't cause any problems. Versus doing a straight cut like this, you end up with beautiful clean edges if you do a straight cut, but the slag welds itself over at the back, so you end up having to tap the parts out versus doing the swirl and having weld ready edges but just no sort of clean up other than that.
That's the level of pretty you end up with. It's pretty crisp, clear, lovely edge, relatively vertical, and then just easily weldable. You don't have to do any prep work to be able to weld that, and it comes up really beautiful. This is a comparison. This one was cut using the swirly technique. This one was cut just basically using a straight line. I wanted to do them differently to show you the difference. You can see the heat line on this has come in about 3mm or about 1/8 of an inch. It's pretty even all the way around. Obviously I didn't have to cut that back edge, it was already cut, but it gives you an idea. You've got those really clean edges I just showed you, and you've also got a really even heat mark right the way around. This one here I used a straight cut, so just basically trying to drag it along. I've basically butchered it, but I did that on purpose just to sort of show just the difference between the two techniques. You can see the heat has come right in. It's in maybe 1/4 inch, so 6mm or so, and then over here it's even further. I've obviously gone a bit slower over here, and the heat's allowed to just soak out more. So you can see over here it's out 3/8 of an inch or 10mm, So it just gives you an idea of the difference. You can sort of see on both sides, and that, you know, that heat is just basically soaked right out. This is the bottom of this one, so the heat's gone a little bit further because of it being the bottom. But yeah, huge difference in technique.
Thought you'd be the one for me. Won't you tell me how you feel? I shared my dream with you until the morning. Everybody else have done it right. Coming out to see me try. As I
And now time for something completely different. Introducing Umphy. This stuff, ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. It's has the same sliding resistance as Teflon, so it's quite slippery. It's self-lubricating, doesn't take on any water, and it's very, very good at abrasion. So it's often used around trawlers and tugs and things like that. They'll quite often put like strips of it either horizontally or sort of going off on angles like that as essentially protection for the hull against things like wharfs and so on. We're going to be using strips of it. I think from memory they're 1.5 metres long. They're 4 millimetres thick and 40 millimetres wide. We're going to be putting this inside our sliders, and that's what the stainless pin is going to slide up and down against beside. So a lot of people on our wings and our sliders, you can see, let me zoom right in, that little pin that you can sort of see just sticking out there ever so slightly on the side of that arm. That's a stainless pin. It runs up and down the slider track. These plastic strips are going inside the slider track. Now, the only way we can hold this stuff on, you can't glue it, doesn't stick to anything pretty much, so we have to use a mechanical fastening. We're going to be using countersunk, let me open this up, we're going to be using these guys. So 4 millimetre diameter, see if I can focus, 4 millimetre diameter M4 machine screws. They're countersunk, a little Allen head on the top. We're going to be using our fancy drill and tap machine, so it basically drills and taps in one motion. You use the rattle gun to drill it in, that's why it's got the little click click fitting at the end of it. It's a very fast way of creating, I don't know, 100 threads in these sliders, rather than trying to do that by hand, because that's enough to make anyone cry. The beauty of these little drilly tappy combo machines is you can just chuck them in your rattle gun, and as they spin, it basically drills it, and then because you've got the spiral on the threading part of it, it clears all the swarf out for you, just like a drill bit. It spits it all vertical and up the top here. If you have a normal straight shank tap, it just doesn't do the same thing. You've got to go forward, back to clear it all out. So these things here, you can just literally plunge all the way through in one movement, and then just flick it in reverse and come all the way back out. They're awesome. The only thing I'm nervous about with this is it's only rated to go to 3.5 millimetres deep in terms of the steel that I'm going through, so 3.5 millimetre thick steel maximum. I've got to go through 6 millimetres, so I'm pretty confident I'm going to snap this off at some point, but I've got 3 of these things, so she'll be right. So these plastic strips basically sit either side of that pin like that. So this pin here runs up the middle, and there's a strip here and a strip here where I've got that one placed, and that's how we stop the stainless steel pin from taking the paint off the mild steel sliders. Some eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed there's a slight gap here, so when we stick the plastic it's going to be like that. However, we're going to be cutting that out, so we'll slice this plastic out around there, and then we'll put that plastic onto a piece of steel that will go on the outside and get bolted onto this 6mm mild steel. And what that allows is when we unbolt that and take it out, we can use this gap, there's one there and there's one on this side, where we can lift this wing up, pry the arm out of these 2 sliders, and then we can either drop the wing, we can take the arm off. Yeah, it's basically a maintenance thing. It allows us to access that arm and remove the arm full stop from the wing. Without these, we couldn't do it. So we obviously need to clean up some of these fairly bulbous welds and then make our little plates that go in there as well.
Once these are all drilled and tapped, we need to remove them, blast everything, paint it, and then reinstall them.
The grey-bellied stick welder is a common sight on workplaces around Australia. Normally you can find them tucked in
Don't you take breaks?
I'm a MIG welder, I don't need to.
With the holes now drilled, it's time to enlarge the holes with a 4mm drill. Once I figured out exactly how to do it, I assembled the tools. This is what I'm using to get each of these screws in.
We all strive to be more. We all long for viva la vida. Around the corner I'll meet you.
This is the start of making our giveaway piece of Brupeg. This was cleaning genuine 45-year-old fishing trawler rust from the inside of the Sponson.
I tried a few different ideas in terms of amperage, gas coverage, that sort of thing, and even tried how to figure out how to see the words with using like Vivid or a marker pen, and then doing like dots into a letter and then straight lines into a letter, all that, trying to figure out how to see it. Turns out you can't really see any of that through a welding mask. Yes, it does look like a child freehanded that.
This is cleaning up our third attempt to see if we can make this look good. We realised with an acid bath and then a solid buff off in the grinder, it came up pretty shiny.
Around the corner I'll meet you.
It still wasn't good enough. It wasn't up to our standards. So we ground off the words. We sandblasted the piece of steel again, and then we started writing in the word Brupeg once more so that we could make sure that it looked proper.
And we learn from our mistakes.